right, guys, welcome to episode one of the podcast. I'm here with Blake, the protagonist. Blake, you have any other way that you'd like to introduce yourself?
No, that's all I need, you know.
Love it.
I'm Blake, the protagonist. That's my last name.
Love
Also known as Blake Phillips, but most people don't know that.
it. Fair enough. I know you as Blake Phillips. I got you in my phone as Blake Phillips. But
Okay, okay.
yeah, man, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being episode one. I figured instead of spending a lot of time like figuring out how to produce this, we just rip it raw and dirty, no scripts, no nothing, just have an awesome conversation and see where it goes.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for making me the first. You were my fifth of all time that I dropped, so that was super cool. And so now I'm honored to be on here.
Love it. Yeah. Check out Blake's podcast. It is Hurtful Truth. I think there's an X in there somewhere.
I actually took the
Truth.
X out now, so it's just Hurtful Truth podcast. No one else had it. So if you look that up, you'll see me.
Very nice. Cool.
Yes.
Well, today we're going to dive into a couple concepts that just fascinate me. Reality creation, accessing flow states, and just honestly overall like what we've learned about success, business, lifestyle. We don't have all the answers. I'm not claiming to say that we have all the answers, but I'd love to hear from you, Blake. Like, what is your experience with flow states?
Flow states in terms that's like something I don't usually use the words flow state. But whenever you say it, why don't you define it before I go ahead and like say anything
Yeah.
about it?
So I define flow as when you get in the zone or when you get locked in, when time disappears, you're completely one with the present moment
Mm.
and just everything's flowing. Like flow itself is a perfect word for it, but hours turn into well, like just a
Mm.
snap of the fingers. For me, rock climbing or backcountry skiing, doing extreme sports really locks me in. Also, now writing is becoming more and more of something I get into the flow, and just like anytime I can access my creativity and just like work for work's sake or do something for the sake of doing it, like respecting the process as opposed to doing it for the end result.
Yeah, okay, so in this case that reminds me a lot of music, how I get when I'm making music. That's like I just kind of let it come out, but at the same time flow state, I'd say my experience with that is through music, but also just being with myself, spending time again with myself. I can't explain that much any other way. Uh, a lot of people are not spending time with themselves and actually using themselves as company. They they view themselves as someone to escape, you know? And
100%.
I don't do that. I and if I do that, I have to get out of that immediately because you have to be able to sit with yourself. You're the person that's always there. You're the one constant in your life. You're the one thing that's always in all of your problems and honestly causing all of your problems. So that's how I view it. And when you say flow state, the way that you could like the way that I go about it is really just doing voice memos, a lot of voice memos where I just talk to myself. And honestly what I love about that is it allows you to like have a reason to be quiet as well. Even though it sounds like okay, I turn on a voice memo, I'm probably going to want to talk. But sometimes it just gives you the like discipline. It gives you the discipline to just be with yourself instead of thinking about everything else. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, this will tie into reality creation in a second. I first started creating voice notes when I was traveling. I was in Thailand at the time, and I was talking about how like I was just recording voice notes of an epic experience I was having, and I was at that time already also leaving a voice note or instructions for my assistant. Telling him where to edit it, when he would be editing it, and then 4 years, 5 years later, I have an assistant who does, go through my voice notes, transcribes them, pulls out the key ideas and things like that. So it's crazy how that came to be, which we'll spend more time in just a sec. Before we get there, I'm curious to hear you mentioned like being with yourself. Now, are you just chilling when you're doing that? Are you like meditating or what do you mean exactly by like spending time with
Yeah.
yourself?
I'd say honestly just making yourself your company. I know I said that earlier, but like really making yourself your company where you can talk to yourself and really have a conversation. I when I started doing that, I was 20 years old. I'm 24 now. I remember I would go on walks, which is an amazing way to do that, by the way. Getting out of the house is helpful, especially in nature of some kind or just somewhere that's more natural than where you're at. I mean, I would go on walks with my friend Antoine, very close friend of mine, and we would talk and have really deep conversations. And then I had recalled, like a while back before that, that I had a voice memo with another friend in the car. It was a really deep conversation, and whenever I listened to it, it put myself in that moment, and it really made me think about the things I was saying a lot. And I was able to grow from that because if I didn't record it, I mean, I don't know if I would have remembered. So I started doing that like while I was on the walk. Just would start. It put me in in that moment with that person, which meant it brought back the entire memory of that moment, and that was important to me. So I started doing that, and ever since I started doing that, then I was like, well, why don't I do this when I'm alone too on my walk, and just like start talking to myself on the walk because he wasn't around. And when I started doing that, really, really, really helped me as a person start knowing like what I actually believe in. Because you know you think you know what you believe, and then you start saying it out loud to yourself, not just other people. Because you start, all right, let's say you're in the room with a friend. Your friend has certain beliefs. Sometimes you might accidentally start kind of speaking to their beliefs rather than your own. Just that's just part of life, you know. You become who you're around. So whenever you start becoming who you're around, but who you are around is you. It's different.
All the time. Yes.
Yeah. So like I started talking to myself and then I'm realizing what do I actually believe and what am I willing to put on this documentation that I believe. And so that really made everything make more sense because there was a lot of times I was actually confused when I'm talking to myself. I'm like, well, I don't really. I was like arguing with myself in a way, like, well, I don't believe that. How do I communicate this better? And then it became, it's not that I didn't know what I believed, it's that I didn't know how to communicate it.
Hmm.
So once I talked to myself a lot, I started getting to the point where now I know how to say what I was trying to say the whole time. And it made a lot of sense why people didn't understand what I believed, or not even what I believed. I always felt misunderstood. And I think anyone out there that's feeling misunderstood, it's because of you. It's because you don't know how to communicate it to them, you know?
I love that. Yeah. I think that anybody who would be watching this or just people in general who are on this path, we tend to be people who potentially feel misunderstood or feel like we're either outliers, like high performers, or just not interested in the default American dream programming, right? Getting a job, working for somebody else, spending time building some other dream or somebody else's dream for, a retirement at age 65, which I don't know if that resonates with you, but at least from what I've seen with you, you seem like somebody who just grab life by the horns and you decide how it's going to be.
Man, I love how you say horns because one of my biggest things, I'm wearing a cross for a reason here. I do grab life by the horns, quite literally. I'm in the city of Los Angeles right now,
Ah,
and it's where all of the things are broadcasted. But yes, I do just like go for it. And honestly, it's very risky in a lot of situations, but to me, it was never risky. We've had this conversation, but to me, it's not risky. It's just because whenever you know who you are and like what you're capable of, and you just know you're gonna get it done at the end of the day, it's no longer a question. It's just like not risky. It's riskier for me to be stuck in a loop of bad bad results, guaranteed bad results than a kind of crazier sporadic version of that that's got way more room for growth. So I kind of just jumped and went into LA with no money, like just credit, knowing that I'm gonna make it back, and it was worth it. It's been worth it, every bit of it, and I've learned a lot, and it's gonna set me ahead. It already has set me ahead by years because there's a lot of people that'll never get out of their comfort zone and their habitat that's so comfort. I was comfortable. I was very comfortable. You know, I was already making money online in Oklahoma with my rent being $600 a month, and now it's double that for something smaller.
Yeah.
So now I just went anyways. And what I'm trying to say by all that is that you got to really get out of your comfort zone if you want to grow.
I love that you say that. Like, it's one of the most like trite things. Like everybody knows that what they want is outside of their comfort zone, but comfort really is the killer of dreams, right? When I was originally in my government job working air traffic control, every I was so comfortable, right? I was making 150K a year. I worked 40 hours a week, but the work that I actually did was like half that. Like each day you'd work for 4 hours and I'd be playing ping pong in the break room or going downstairs lifting weights or going outside shooting hoops, something like
I
that. And
didn't
so,
even know it was like that. That's cool.
yeah, man. I mean, it's that job is so intense that you got to be sharp. So they give you a lot of breaks, like a lot of opportunities out there. But ultimately, for me, it was the environment that was just not good. Mainly the people, right? So everybody that was there, with the exception of like 2% of people, were overweight. They were living paycheck to paycheck. They didn't like being there, but they had to be there. They were trapped. And so I'm curious, like, first off, you mentioned, getting out of your comfort zone, but what gave you the courage and the unwavering confidence to be able to just bet on yourself?
Amazing question, bro. You're good at this.
Yeah, we don't have any scripts. We don't have anything. This is just, we're just flowing.
Oh, man, the thing that gave me the confidence and the courage, that's such an amazing question because the reason why that's an amazing question is because people need to hear it so bad and they don't understand like there is a reason that you become confident in yourself. Uh, One thing that Myron had said, Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit, that I really love was that competence or confidence comes from competence. That was one of my favorite quotes because it's so true that like I think the moment I became super confident in myself was whenever I became really good at something. And when like really good at something that I just knew I was talented and also like skilled at the same time, and that was making beats. And it might sound as like funny because it's like what does making beats have to do with going to some random place or doing whatever? It's because I knew I was good at this thing. And I knew that I'm like better than 99% of people at this thing. And so that carried into everything. I'm like, okay, well, I'm really good at this. And whenever I talk to people, I know I have a specialty. And then consistently just kept getting more and more skills and consistently started getting better at other things. So like you already know I'm in sales or I've been in sales and I've done a lot of different things in business now. And that has really carried over into everything too. So I'd say that one of the biggest things is really just getting to the point where you can trust yourself. That's actually what matters, is trusting yourself. It's not about if other people trust you. And it doesn't matter what specific skill it is. I think that once you get to the point you really trust yourself to make decisions and that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, that's whenever you become really confident. And it really carries into everything forever, for the rest of your life. Talking to women, talking to a businessman, me talking to you, me talking to anybody, and actually creating real relationships with these people wouldn't have happened if I didn't actually put myself in front of them and be confident enough to think that I even deserve to talk to them. Yeah, that is one of the biggest things that I'll notice a lot of people on the way up. The reason why they don't put themselves in front of people, even on a content level, is because they're not happy with who they are, and they're not happy to broadcast that person to the world or to a person.
I love that. So everything is connected. Maybe it's just that I'm always seeking out people who have a similar mindset, but you mentioned three of the four C's that my buddy Trent, who I'll get him on the podcast in a little bit, who's an outstanding real estate agent, mentioned. He said, I asked him, what's going on with all your success? Like, why are you so good at this? And he said, it's the four C's, man. I'm like, okay, so you're going to tell me, right? And he's like, yeah, confidence, competence, credibility, and consistency. And so you mentioned all of those except for credibility, probably just because we didn't even get there yet.
But credibility comes from the trust side, so maybe I kind of said it, kind of said.
Exactly. And I mean, you're doing what you say you're going to do. When I started doing that, everything changed for me, right? It's like I learned it as the say do ratio, right? What percentage of what you say do you actually do? And it is unbelievable when you make the commitment to yourself. For anybody who's watching or listening right now, if you make the decision and the commitment that if I say something, I'm going to do it, your life will forever change. And once I made that decision, now I'm way more careful with what I commit to do. And I'll even pause sometimes when I'm about to say something because I'm really careful with my language. I actually just wrote a newsletter about how important the words are that we use, instead of having to do something, wanting or getting to do something or being blessed to do something, which is, it's the same action, but how you define it makes so much of a difference. Now, somebody else, David, you'll find him on Twitter. I don't even know what his last name is, but he mentioned the four C's as well, and he tied it together in the most elegant way ever, in a similar way that you tied it together. He said the four C's: consistency. This was for outbound sales. Consistency leads to confidence. Confidence leads to competence. And competence leads to, and he said conviction instead of credibility, but basically the same thing. And it was so interesting that, if you're consistent enough, of course you're going to get good. If you're good, of course people are going to believe in you and you're going to be good at it, and everything is downhill there. So what is
you
that?
said about not to interrupt you. Did you have something to say real quick?
Go ahead. No, I was going to
Um,
back on you.
the biggest thing that I got out of what you said that I love that stuck out to me is the words you use, because me and my friends talk about that all the time. And if I hear somebody say a certain word or a certain way they say the word, or like the context around the word, then I literally will call them out immediately, because I even tweeted the other day that the vocabulary you use is, I forgot exactly how I worded it, but I said that the vocab you use dictates or is a big indicator for your limiting beliefs. So if I hear you say like, hopefully I'll do this or hopefully I'll do that, stuff like, you already said I either am doing it or I'm not doing it. It's kind of how I view it. If I think,
Yep.
yeah, and then getting to do something rather than having to do something is a big one too. And it just kind of changes the way you think as well. That's what's interesting. It's kind of how it goes. That kind of goes into actions versus thoughts, and how you changing your thoughts does change your actions, but simultaneously your actions are changing your thoughts.
Absolutely.
So if I'm eating bad foods on a regular basis, it's very hard to outperform what my body is consuming. But yeah, like it goes both ways. If I was always consuming some type of bad content around that makes me think a certain thing, it's hard to outperform that. So you have to it's kind of like understanding the balance of both.
Yeah. Again, everything is connected. If you eat like shit, you're going to feel like shit. You're not going to want to work out. Then you're going to have, you know, more energy later in the evening or you're going to end up spending all your time in front of soul sucking blue light watching Netflix or playing a game on your computer or scrolling whatever platform it is of your choice, which is then going to have you get up later. You're going to feel bad for waking up later. And then it's going to be harder for you to eat good food because you're going to grab whatever's convenient, which is then the crappy food, which is then going to continue the cycle.
You are what you eat. And
It's so crazy. I've always heard that, and it took me a while to put the connection of like when you eat something, it literally goes into your body. Like, and it sounds so obvious, like, well,
yeah,
duh, but it goes into your body and it is you until you deal with it, turn it into muscle, turn it into fat, or get rid of it, um, through waste.
it's so true. I mean, it's going through, and even whenever it goes through waste, sometimes there's remnants of it still in your body. That's why detoxing your body is so helpful through, fasting or some other ways too. You could go to the sauna. I like saunas a lot too. Kind of helps you sweat out toxins, but obviously there's certain things you can't just get out with that. So that's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah, man. There's a new place. I'm in Utah right now, and there's a new place that I'd almost call it like a bathhouse. It's a sauna with cold plunge right outside the sauna. And I think places like that are the future. Just wellness places in general. Then downstairs, they've got a whole bunch of good food. They've got water with extra hydrogen in it or something like that. Do you know anything about that?
No,
I don't either. It sounds like it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I want it to be beneficial in some way, but I don't know. You
I
know,
think that the biggest thing I stand by is natural water, though. Regardless, and there he has you. As I said that, he's
natural
like
water in
drinking.
glass.
Yeah, exactly. No, you know, the only time you'll see me not doing that is if I have to. But overall, you should be drinking natural water. Eating natural things helps too. And yeah, organic is helpful because authenticity. It's that's a very powerful word, authenticity in everything with content, with food, with water, with people in general. And
Absolutely. It's crazy that you can tell when somebody is not being authentic.
that's
Right?
true.
You can feel it, right? You get this vibe that something is off, and like, yeah, there can be a guy who's just really good at sales and really slick that can tell you everything that you want to hear. But at the end of the day, you could typically feel it. I'll sometimes notice, I said, no, I buy a lot of coaching, like a lot. And I was on a call with somebody for hypnotherapy, and I just it just felt wrong, and like and it also didn't help that he was just not very good at sales. So like in the way of like it just felt awkward. Um, like the second call was in the description said decision call. And I'm like, dude, I already told you I'm in sales. I know how this works. Like I'm fine to respect your process, but just like don't string me along here. And I felt so much resistance to that call. I canceled it the first time because I was like, I don't want to go. Like I don't want to talk to this guy. And then the second time I took the call and then I was just like, yeah, this is clearly not a fit. And so I said no to him and it was just again something that I could feel, which is crazy. What is your experience in general with intuition?
Man, another amazing question. Um, Regardless of what people believe, uh, God speaks to me, and God is to me, regardless of how you believe it, the highest power in the entire universe and the source of everything. So I really believe that, and not even just believe, I know because I'm spoken to by this power. I feel it. You know what I mean? You can't deny it when you feel it, but it's told me things. When it comes to intuition, you just have to trust it because it's something spiritual. It's not physical. It's something that's telling you and nudging you in a certain direction. Have you ever seen Interstellar before?
Yes.
Do you remember, like, when he goes through this black hole and he's in this weird dimension where he can see the past? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Well, this is how I believe, this is how I interpreted that movie. I believe that he was saying the whole time. They're always referring to, almost like they're referring to God. They say they. They. The whole point of that movie to me is like, you are connected to God. He's like the all-knowing version of you. And that's how I view it. And in that movie, he's guiding his past self. It's amazing. And he's sitting there, he's like knocking books over. He's playing with the light, but he can't touch you and make your decision for you. He just nudges you. And that whenever you say intuition, that's what I think of is like a nudge to go a certain direction. And you can either take that because God speaks in whispers, or you can ignore it. And that completely, and it will make sense. That's the funny part. You can make it make sense to ignore it, or you can make it make sense to follow it, which is what I do. So it works.
It's so interesting. So some people have a negative connotation with the word God because they're thinking of like an old man in the sky, right? You also mentioned source. I don't know what else that you said, but there's it's interesting. Like I believe that all paths lead to God, and some people aren't willing to use that word, or they had a bad experience in religion, or whatever the case was. So then they use the word the universe, right, or source, or whatever. But it's all describing the same thing.
I talk about this frequently, even today. The fact that you brought that up is like meant to happen, I believe. Yet another yet another experience is divine, and you can't tell me otherwise because there's no such thing as a coincidence, especially with things like this. But I've been saying this multiple different days this past week. I've had conversations about that exact thing. There's a song by this was open, or my mind was opened whenever I watched or listened to this certain song by Kendrick Lamar. There was a song called Pride in his album called Damn, which was actually meant to say damnation, and it's about all the seven deadly sins, which is crazy. He's a genius. But there's a song called Pride, and in the song he says, if something like this, I'm not going to say it exact, I don't think, but we should take all the religions and put them all in one service just to say that we ain't shit, but he's been perfect. And I was like, wow, that opened my mind to a whole new way of thinking when I heard that, because I was like, that's so true. Like, everyone's arguing over these little finite details around what they believe about maybe the specific text of a Bible or whatever it is, maybe exactly how it happened. And it doesn't matter, because what matters is what's happening. And if we just all believe in a higher power and we agree with that, then why are we arguing over anything? Why aren't we just, I mean, I get we can argue over like what's right and wrong and things like that, but overall we shouldn't be arguing over little details that have nothing to do with anything. You know what I mean? If we would all just come together and worship that higher power together, don't you think that the world would be more harmonious?
Absolutely. I have long believed that all the different religions, they're talking about the same experiences, but they had a different copywriter, right? The guy who wrote the book or told the stories got a message from whatever this being is, God, source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and then they had their human interpretation of it, and they inputted and added their personality, which then led to how that religion shaped. It's
Dude,
so interesting, right? It's so interesting that, like, for example, all these religions, all these ancient texts talk about fasting, right? To me, it's like, okay, I want to fast just because that's a thing that is Lindy. It's consistently been a thing that people have done throughout the ages. And so even if I don't have reasons why or data on why, I want to fast just to see what that experience is like. And obviously, there's a lot of physical benefits. We're now learning and seeing what all these physical benefits are. I mean, the mental challenge is quite interesting as well. And ultimately, even just the amount of time, like the fact that you can get more energy after being 2 days fasting is crazy to me. Like, it makes you realize and look back at like how much time you waste preparing meals, eating the meal, cleaning up after the meal, all that stuff.
don't you think? I want to go back to the thing you said about vessels. In a sec. You didn't say that, but that's what we are as vessels of some sort of message from somewhere. That's what I believe. Uh, but what you just said, I'll go off that real quick. The fasting is important because it shows you what actually is needed rather than what's wanted. And I really
Mm,
love that because you don't really need to eat as much as you eat. You just are programmed, which we always talk about programming, even in the other podcast. But you're programmed, and you program yourself as well as they're programming you to think that you need to eat every day, which makes you hungry, and your body now is like needing, like feels like you need it, but it's not actually how it works because there's people that survive a week with no food, at least a week.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, what do you think of the programming that I got when I was growing up was breakfast was the most important meal of the day.
I
And
heard about from Luke Belmar. He talked about this. Luke Belmar has taught me a lot of things through his content. So shout out Luke Belmar. I've talked to him before. Super cool guy. But he basically said that breakfast was created by the nephew of the father of propaganda. I'm pretty sure. So the father of propaganda, he was who they call that if you look it up. It was created either by him or his nephew. I know Netflix was created, I think, by the nephew of the father of propaganda. I think I might be right about this if I say that the actual father of propaganda was the one that started pushing ham as like bacon and different sausage things. They were trying to get more sales with
mm,
ham and sausage and things, so they made breakfast. Then it just started being the most important meal of the day. Once they wanted some more sales and sausage, isn't that convenient?
it's good marketing. They're messing with stuff, that's for sure.
Man, it's funny knowing about marketing, man. It changes their life and sales because everything makes sense, like way more sense than it did. So,
Yeah.
I do have a question. How has the sales and marketing knowledge you have affected the way you view the world?
Um, Interesting. So I just like I've learned that people want to buy, not to be sold to. I buy more stuff now that I know about sales, but I don't like people whose process sucks, right? Um, and I, I don't like when there's a pop up on the page that wants my email address unless I'm already going there to buy the thing, and it's like 10% off. Sure, why not? Um, I see what they're doing. I find it interesting because it's like, oh, this is something that I could learn that I could potentially implement. Um, hmm. It's people who are really good, you can't even tell they're doing it. So, like Larry, for example, when I got on a sales call with him, I was like, I know exactly what you're doing, but I love it, right? Garrett is the same way. Like you get on a call with him and you're like, I know you're going to persuade me or try to persuade me to buy this, but like I just like you. You're really good at this. This is a fun and good interaction and experience. And so I think more than anything, I enjoy people who are good at the craft. But I was at a meditation retreat in Sedona and their sales pitch was painful. It was like they had some like machine that was gonna like scan your aura or something, which I didn't really believe in the first place. And then they did it at the beginning, and then they did it at the end, and then they told you where you improved, and then they're like, oh, based on this is the retreat you should sign up for next. But the problem was it was like the meditation teacher who clearly had no experience with sales, and they were just like really hard selling it without like asking any questions, without like it just felt so wrong. Like I was so turned off by it. Like I did not like it at all. And so I think when people are good at it and they have a good product, like yeah, they're absolutely like they should do anything in their power to get you to buy it. Marketing in general, I think that there's a saying, I think it's from Anthony Pompliano. He who controls the the meme controls the I don't know what it is exactly, but like he who controls the meme controls the message or controls the narrative or something like that. And it's really interesting to see like the best marketing, it doesn't even look like marketing, right?
It's just
And
identifying a problem and getting attention.
it getting you
The
to
right.
feel it, right?
Yeah.
So have you seen this like chart of the scales of like levels of energy?
No.
So it goes through all the emotions. Like some of the lowest emotions are going to be like shame and guilt. And then like fear is a low emotion, right? And then a little bit higher up is desire. And then above that is anger. And then finally, these are all the ones that are below 200 that are like the, I don't know if you call them negative states, but lower vibrational states. And then you get up into like willing or neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and then after that is love, and then joy and peace, and then at like level 100 is like Jesus. And what's really interesting is it's an incredible concept. You could spend a lot of time learning more about, level of energy of certain people, places, things in general, but that getting somebody angry, like marketing that gets somebody angry, can actually be a benefit. If they were at a lower level of energy than anger, you're actually raising their energy and getting them more able to take action and get them to a better place. But I think it's no constant or it's no coincidence that all the news is out there to make you fearful or angry, right?
I
Because
agree.
they want to keep people below the 200 level because they are way easier to control.
That's a good point. Mm. And so that's actually where I was going with the question even more was like in daily life and how they're, how
Mm.
society works. Now that you know sales marketing and all this stuff, you just brought that up already. Like how has that changed your awareness of like how they're manipulating you on a daily basis and other
Yeah, I
people?
mean, to me, it just becomes so much more obvious, right? Everything that happened in 2020, like to me, it was like clearly what I was experiencing in the world versus what was shown in the news was very different. And then it was also very interesting at how people who didn't have an awareness of marketing or sales, I keep getting these thumbs up things, people who didn't have an experience of it, they just gobbled it up, right? They just took the psyop and went with it, which I thought was like, huh, interesting. And I mean, ultimately, I think there's some people that just they already have their model of the world or their map of reality, and they're happy with it or unwilling to change it, and so they won't change it. And so there's some people that like we probably just lost them, right? At this part of the conversation, they're like, I'm not interested. I'm going on to the next thing. Totally fine. You're not our people anyway, or at least not yet. Like go rewind to the earlier parts and focus more on raising your beliefs and being intentional about what you put in your body and other things, and then maybe this stuff will make sense later. But yeah, it's incredible to me the how easy people are to control. I had a tweet today that was talking specifically about like if I wanted to control people, I would make them ask for permission to do everything. I'd tell them to be fearful, and I started at a very young age,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So you would, if you had a school, would you make people raise their hand?
Man,
That's
you're
a good
like
question.
this is I've been watching a lot of Luke Belmar stuff recently too. And it's like it's no coincidence how early they put the kids into the school to get those beliefs programmed in. And then man, it takes a long time and a lot of work to shed some of this programming if you're even able to do it. Like a lot of people they won't even pick their head up and get out of that, you know, fiat slave mindset. Um, which is crazy to me, but yeah, absolutely. Make them raise their hand to ask a question, to go to the bathroom. I tell them that no, you shouldn't share your work with other people.
I
Um,
tell them if I wanted them to think in kind of a communist way, I would tell them that if they're gonna bring gum, then they have to bring some for everyone.
mm, it's interesting that all of these things, and there's a lot like whatever was the thing, it wasn't just like localized in your hometown, right? Like you grew up in Oklahoma, I grew up in Minnesota, but yeah, we still had that same rule. And so it's interesting what sticks and what doesn't. And yeah, man, I my sister's a second grade teacher, bless her heart. I have always wanted to be an educator. And so that's why I started my coaching program was I'm like the future of education is clearly online. And it's clearly finding people who have done what you want to do and learning from them. And then, even just content can be education. And what I'm building, which we haven't talked about at all yet, but what I'm building in the future is actually helping people go from becoming aware of me or other people that they respect and like online, turning those into, maybe it's a coaching program or just calls. Like right now, I'm doing calls, like not charging for them, giving coaching to people. But the ultimate thing is to bring people to in-person events. Like I'm going this weekend to Austin. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Danny Miranda is hosting a men's retreat in Austin. And 4 months ago, I went to a meetup that Soul Bra held to go climb the tallest mountain in Costa Rica. And like those experiences of finding your tribe, finding people that have those same interests as you that you were like, you kind of knew about them or you were friends with them online versus actually meeting them in person is so powerful.
Very, very true, bro. I've met a lot of people through Twitter and the internet. It's kind of cool. But that wouldn't happen if you didn't put yourself in that position. And not only just reaching out to them, but also even like viewing them as a real person. It's kind of funny because a lot of people don't. They don't even do it on purpose. I think that they just like look at a name on a screen. They're like, well, I never see them in my life. The world is smaller than you think.
Yeah, it really is. Oh man, it really is. And
Uh,
yeah, there's a saying, "Winners win," which becomes a self fulfilling prophecy, but also just your willingness to ask or to start the conversation. Something that I really respect about you. I remember we met. I was leading a coaching call for Garrett's program, and you didn't take over the call, but it turned from a group call into like you and I talked for probably half the call or something like that. And you're like, you should come on my podcast. And I'm like, I
yeah.
think I will.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, it's funny though. I don't, that's another situation where you don't ask for permission. You ask for forgiveness, and it's okay. And obviously that doesn't apply to every single thing, but that applies in a lot of social situations where it's best for you to actually speak up and say what you have to say because someone else probably had the same question, or maybe it's not a question, maybe it's just input that will help people. And at the end of the day, the things I was saying was because I knew that it was a subject that I have expertise in, which is like mindset and just life, the way that you view it. That part is really, really important. Obviously, probably more important than all the technical stuff, I'd say. And, if you were talking about something I knew nothing about, I would just shut up. Or I'd ask a question. But I'm highlighting that for people because that led me to speaking with you, a very valuable person. And I am happy to talk to people that are at your level. Even before I felt like I was even at that level, even though I do view you as a peer anyways, because I know who I will be and what I will do. You know what I mean?
Time's just got to catch up.
Exactly. So that's why people need to view themselves that way, that they are who they will be. I always say that. That's probably my main message. If I could tell someone something, is that you are who you will become. And like, because once you decide who you will become, you start, okay, that's your goal of acting that way, which means along the way, you'll be you'll be doing those things most likely that person would do. If you're gonna become that person, the only way you'll become that person is if you start acting like them. So That's one of the biggest things I wanted to say. I wanted to go back real quick though. You brought up like how God. I think you said God uses you. Is that what you said?
God uses you in what way?
You were talking about like kind of whenever I brought up we're a vessel. We're just a vessel. God will speak through us.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, the devil will speak through you too if you allow it. If you allow it, because there's a lot of people in the city of Los Angeles that don't notice that the wrong person is speaking.
Mm.
And I'm just saying it's funny because it's not even funny, it's almost sad because they don't notice what they're doing. They don't even know. And I've noticed like a lot of them are just confused, and you brought up how I don't know if you said the devil works in confusion, but I think you were kind of alluding to they try to confuse you because that's where they get you to be deceived is by getting you in a position where you don't really know. So it's like anything could be the right thing. But if you understand like fully what you believe, then they can't get you. You start being very stubborn. And I've been telling all my friends that you have to be stubborn to anybody. It doesn't matter if it's your friends, your family, whatever it is. If you really truly believe in yourself, you have to be extremely stubborn. And that goes into everything with God, against the devil, and by the way, even if you don't believe in God and the devil, you believe in good and evil. If you don't believe in good and evil, you're wrong. That's all I have to say because it's obvious. I mean, look around. It's very obvious, in my opinion, that, and I think that if you say that that's not there, you're ignoring it.
Mm. Yeah.
But
It's
yeah, real quick, go ahead. But I do want to say the last thing I was gonna say is that you need to really be careful who's speaking through you, because you allow people to speak through you regardless. Make sure it's the right person or
that's
energy.
interesting. Yeah. I was gonna say it's interesting that, you yourself are like often the person that you lie to more than anybody else, right? You're not willing to accept examining, whether it's things that have happened in the past or like why you do things. Like people will, it's interesting when you watch somebody who's on autopilot, whether good or bad, if you ask them why they do something, they usually don't know, but they'll come up with a reason why, right? They'll justify what they're doing with a reason why, um, but they may have never known, right? Why they're doing it. They're just doing it because either that's the way they've always done it or whatever. There's a really interesting story. Um, this mother is teaching her daughter how to make ham in the oven. And so they pull out the pan, they cut off both ends of the ham, put it in the pan, and put it in the oven. And the daughter's like, Mom, why are you cutting off both ends of the ham? And she's like, I don't know. That's what grandma always did. Let's call her. So they call grandma and they're like, hey, grandma, when you taught me how to make that like really good ham, why did you always cut off both ends of the ham? And she's like, I don't know. That's what my mom always did. So then they call, and great grandma's just barely still alive. So they call her up and they're like, hey, grandma, when you make that amazing ham, like, why do you cut off both ends? And she goes, oh, that was so it would fit in the pan. And so it's like, how often are you doing something that you don't know the reason why you're doing it, right? You're just doing it because you saw somebody else do it. Somebody else had this map of reality that you're just copying when in the end, the map isn't the territory, anyways.
That's one of my main things I stand for. I always tell people that you have to ask why to be wise. That the only way that you're ever going to get wisdom is if you ask why. And it's more about the why than it is the how. Because when you have the why, everything kind of seems to miraculously line up.
Absolutely. Have you heard this saying, the map is not the territory before?
I've heard that before. I don't
What does
think
it
about it
mean to you?
often. The map is not the territory. The map is not all there is, first of all. Second of all, why would I've actually experienced this exact situation in real life. I might have brought this up. I think we said this something like this last time. I don't know. Maybe it was a different podcast, but my friend and I were walking at night in a place, and he's looking at the map like, well, the fence ends up there. Like, let's just go back. Like the fence. I mean, it's gonna go all the way down here and it stops. And I'm like, bro, well, we haven't gone there yet. You know what I mean? So I was like, it's not gonna show on the map like where the fence ended, and there's a little spot where you can get on the other side over here. They're not gonna tell you that. So I was like, I'm going anyway. So I kept going, and I found a little spot, exactly what I was thinking. And point is, like, yeah, the map is not the territory. It's what they are willing to show you, or it's what they're willing to make you think.
Yeah. Yeah. I interpret this model as your map of reality, like what you have decided to be true, because, as you develop, you learn certain things that you believe aren't true. But maybe you haven't gotten there yet, right? Maybe if you're using an outdated map, for example, if you're using whatever came before Google Maps, MapQuest. I don't know if you ever used that, and it was before we had smartphones. Dating myself here, but if you're using an old version of a map or a paper map that doesn't have the road, or it has a road that's no longer there, you're not going to get to where you're going. And so it's like what I find is very important, a very important quality to have, is to be willing to say, I don't know, right? And ask questions, because when you ask questions, then you can update your map from somebody who may have a more complete map. And then, like you said, ask why to figure out, is this map something that I actually want to adopt or not?
Very true.
Yeah.
You need to be able to figure out what you actually know and what you don't know. Sometimes that really just comes to being willing to not know. Because I feel like knowing is almost choice sometimes. Like, if you feel like you know something, it's because you're stubborn about, like, well, it's going to happen this way, and this is how I want it to be. This is how I want to think. So, like, whenever it comes down to, like, I know I'm going to be successful, it's almost delusional until it isn't. But it's not delusional because it happens. But my point is, that's, like, one of those things I'm super stubborn about. So if I were to be in a position where I'm willing to not know that I'm going to be successful, then I might entertain the idea that someone else has that maybe you'll fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everything
Now,
starts in the
obviously,
mind.
yeah, and obviously that's not a situation you're going to want to entertain the idea that you're going to not win. But in other situations, it kind of goes into it. You have to be willing to not know to actually sometimes find out the truth, you know?
100%. This is a perfect segue into reality creation. Before we wrap up, I want to understand what your experience is with creating your own reality. Because mine has
Yeah.
been, if I can see it in my mind's eye, I can do it. But if I can't, it's very difficult. And so this is where, like, visualization, for example, comes to be very important. And it is a legit skill where something that we probably can't explain with science, or the science, I should say. Um, but for me, if I'm able to see it, I can do it. And so I'm curious, like, for you, what have you experienced with creating your own reality, or if you want to call it manifesting, or however that comes up for you?
So by doing these voice memos with myself, I've learned a lot about how I view the world and how to explain it. So I'm going to go back to the God situation, how I view the world. Because that kind of goes into how I am able to, like, what you'd call manifesting everything out of my thoughts into into my reality. And even though it almost doesn't even make sense to other people, but I just somehow do. And the reason why is because I view God as, like I said, the highest version of me and you and anybody, all of us put together. Have you seen Inception before?
Yes.
Okay, this is amazing. I always explain my beliefs through both these movies, both by Christopher Nolan, Interstellar and Inception. In Inception, it's all dreams, right? Everybody, you're going into people's dreams over and over. And he says that everybody you see in those dreams that aren't us, well, he doesn't even say that aren't us, actually. But he says everyone you see in these dreams is projections of the person dreaming, which means like it's different pieces of him in his mind, subconscious mind. That's what he says. It's pieces of his subconscious mind making up his thoughts. Now, subconscious mind is obviously not exactly what you're consciously thinking about, what you're actually actively thinking about. You can think about it as active and passive. That's kind of how I see subconscious and conscious. Subconscious is passive and autopilot, and then your conscious is like, the active part you're actively thinking about. So, if you think about it, God, his mind, the source, whatever you want to call it, the universe, the mind of the universe of God that creates everything came from a thought of his mind. If everything comes from a thought, then is it not all a dream in a way? And if the definition of lucid dreaming is realizing you're in a dream, what if you realize that you're dreaming? And you're connected to God, you're just a projection of God. We're all little pieces of his mind, right? That's how I view it. We're all little pieces of his mind. And we're all looking at each other in the first place. Everybody is the same. We're all projections of this God mind. And we're communicating with each other. And so if you can think like that, you're actually actively creating your universe based on what you think, because what you think about is what God's thinking about. So we're co-creating our universe every day. And I kind of view it like this, another way that I view it. All this is from really just talking to myself and understanding like how I can explain it, and even to myself, how do I explain what I believe? So one of the other things is I believe that we all have our own little bubbles of reality. So we all have our own universe in a way. And we can let people into our universe, and now their universe, everything that you think about, you being in my life at all, makes everything that you believe existent in my life. We talked about earlier, like you watch bad stuff on videos or whatever, it's going to be in your head now. It's what you're thinking about. Your mind is now creating stuff based on that. So we all do that. You can't let people with toxic ideas be in your bubble. Their bubble being in your bubble has all of their bubble's toxins. Now, you can help their bubble get cleared up and detoxified, right? But at the end of the day, there's certain people that just can't be in there. So I've realized life is energy, everything. It's all made of the same energy of God, of whatever you want to call it, the universe, energy. They've been teaching you this since the beginning. I think in school they tried to make you not think about it like that. But they did show you it's protons, neutrons, whatever. It's all made up of the building blocks of life, which is energy. Which is why I get intuition about things. You can feel the energy of things and people. You can feel when they're inauthentic. You can feel whenever they're good. I can feel that you're a good person just by talking to you. Which is why we're still talking. And so that's kind of how I view the world, is that my mind is creating everything. So if I can just control what I consume and what I do, which will then control my thoughts, and if my thoughts are controlling what happens in a way, then I just need to be very mindful of how I'm thinking and what I'm thinking about. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Um, Everybody
I
who's
have
listening or watching right now, I highly recommend you pause, rewind, and just listen. Blake just entered the flow and gave you the secrets to the universe there.
I have a
So
couple more for them real quick.
let's hear it.
I was having a conversation in Capital Club, which is Luke Belmar's community, and someone had said you are what you think about. So I said, well, if you are what you think about and you attract what you are, because we all agree that, then why don't you think the thoughts that the best version of you would think about? You attract what you are, and you are what you think about. I had to repeat that so they know. This is how I created my reality, and I continue to, and this is how I met you and Garrett and all these people. It didn't even make sense that I met them. There's someone I even met, my friend Blake Tovez, who we're both from Oklahoma, and of all the different job opportunities that were in Garrett's closing Bible, Blake Tovez was in there, and he was one of the 6 people I applied to work with, and he was from Oklahoma, and I was living in Oklahoma. Out of all the places, Garrett is stationed, or he's based in Chicago. So it didn't have anything to do with that. The fact that that happened is like divine, but it's because you attract what you are. I attracted you and Garrett into my life by the way I think. And the reason why you've entertained me at all, both of you, is because you can feel understood when you talk to me. That's what I believe. If you can feel understood when you talk to me, it makes you feel at peace in a way, because you don't feel crazy. And that's why I say to people all the time that if you want to talk to people at a higher level than you, then you have to think how they think. I have attracted into my life people at a very high level before I was even at that level technically, but my mind was. Because when they talked to me, they felt understood. So this is a very key thing to understand when it comes to networking and elevating in your life in general, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever heard? I just came across this, and I find it so interesting that you are what your name is.
Hmm.
So do you know
Explain
what?
that. Explain.
Do you know what the name? So Tej Dosa. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was saying that he had heard this, and the name Tej means like light, and he clearly is a beacon of light. So then I went
Hmm.
down this rabbit hole of like searching all these different names, right? I just pulled yours up right here,
I already
and
know what
it's
this means. This one's not too.
no, but the one that I pulled up here is also meaning, or a personal name from Blath, which is flower or blossom, also meaning fame or prosperity.
I didn't know that. You might want to send me that. That's interesting. I always looked it up and it was like, oh, he's pale. You know, I'm like, this is boring. You know what I mean? Like, but no, that's cool. But that, I mean, I added on the protagonist. My mom, I know it's crazy, but my mom did not name me Blake the protagonist. So I guess she just doesn't love me enough to do that. But I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. No,
Well, you are the protagonist in your journey.
yes, and that's what actually I will tell you and everybody along with you that I put that name because it's a self-proclamation. I guess that's a word, right?
Hmm.
Proclamation that I control my life, and I'm the main character of my life, and I made a community called the Protagonists, which I'll put you in there too if you'd like to, and I assume you would like to. So I'll put you in there, but other people, I actually have people apply, so I'm not gonna let just anybody in, but it's gonna be a community of people that think as protagonists do, not what you call an NPC, someone just going about life, no goals, not a player. I'm a player in the game.
I love that. One of the most valuable models or lenses to see the world through is that life is a game. So you might as well play to win. You might as well play to have fun.
Yep. I think of it as Grand Theft Auto, the game. It's like you're either one of the guys that just gets hit by a bus and explosions go off and you run away and that's all you do, or you could be the guy that's literally like living the craziest, most amazing life of all time, and doing whatever you want to do, but without as much evil.
Yeah. The choice is yours. I think that is an amazing spot to wrap it up here. If people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Look up Blake the Protagonist on any platform. I should be there. Instagram, I do post like every day. It's something. I do post every day now, and I'm just like the whole goal here is just to expand the awareness of the entire universe because I've realized that if we're all connected and I can at least spread the awareness of all the things I know and the wisdom that I've attained through following God, then the whole world will be a better place. So that's all I'm doing. So if you
I
want
love
to be,
that.
yeah, if you want to be a part of that, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and apply to join the Protagonist community.
I love that.
Yes,
Thanks
in my
again,
link in
everybody, for
bio.
watching.
My
Were you
bad. I
say-
said in the link in bio of my Instagram is there, by the way. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say thanks everybody again for watching. As you probably know, if you made it this far, just pushing the like button. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, then dislike it, and you never have to watch anything that I say again. But push the like button, push the subscribe button. I might put a couple links in the description there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.